love for me.
Okay, so you can all see the title, A Non-Technical Operation Director's Guide to the Data Galaxy. And as you can see, I've stolen the montage or the motif from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So this presentation is going to replete with knockoffs, awkward concepts, things that don't quite fit, so just bear with me. I came up with this presentation whilst on a run. I was listening to a podcast, a BBC podcast, about stargazing. And as they were going through some of the descriptions about what you see in space, I was thinking, wow, lots of these concepts, I think, translate into data and the day-to-day. So what I'm going to try and talk about is fourfold. Stage one is how I went about forming a data team. Stage two is how you go about getting data. Stage three is then you got the data, how do you provide insight? And stage four is how you make database decisions. And so this presentation is more about concepts and less about facts. So there's going to be people in the audience I know for sure that know a lot more about data and technical orchestrations and God knows what else. So I'm not pretending to be an expert. This is just my perspective, and I'd like to share with you what I've seen. Okay, so please be kind. Right, let's get it started. So when I worked at Wonga, I was quite junior still, and just entered the business, and it was still on the way up. Like, as you can see, we had 160 million invested. At one point, it was a 3.5 billion valuation. I'm this young guy. Wonga's on the buses everywhere. It's super exciting. And so you hear the chatter about, we're meeting the board and we're fundraising and this person needs to be impressed and that person and whatnot. And there was this one guy that when you would walk in, he'd be sitting there on a space hopper, literally, with massive headphones on, literally, and going out to smoke, telling everybody, I'm busy, don't chat to me. But actually, he was one of the most pivotal linchpins in the business. All of the decks and the financials were built around his calculus. And I was like, how is this one guy on a space hopper stitching together this international company of 1,000 people with this valuation? I was like, wow, this guy must be important. And the reason he was so important is that he was there from the beginning, so he knew how the company worked. So he had this esoteric knowledge of how the different departments worked. And from that, he knew the calculations, and only he knew the calculations to actually interpolate through the different databases and departments to make it work. He was the most in-demand guy. Get in the queue, he's busy, he's building decks. And then the board were always talking about him. Who is this guy? I need 3 of him, I need 6 of him. Like, the key man risk on this guy was huge. Anyway, so that was my first introduction to data. And that was just a sort of a bit of a contextual framework. So now, 3 years later, I joined YOPA, and then I've got the chance to do something in that space as well. So this is where we started. I joined YOPA in April, and this was the dashboard. Okay, nothing too exciting. It's not horrendous, but it's definitely not a thing of beauty. And this was data. Now, when I joined, we had one guy. He was an architect, he went to Cambridge, super smart, and he got this stuff, okay, but he didn't know how well he got it. And so people were like asking more questions, and we needed to upgrade this. So him and we spent a lot of time thinking through all the different edge cases and bottoming it out and saying, right, well, this is what the definition, this is multiple definitions here and whatnot. And so we were liaising with a third party to help build all of this, and yet they were in Spain, they had no idea how to visualize the business. We didn't own the code. We did own the code, but we didn't build it, so you don't know all those, like, the minutiae of the detail. And we didn't own the infrastructure, the architecture to present it. And I was like, data's really crucial here. Like, we've got to get this in-house. We've got to start getting a grip of this and know what we're doing and get comfortable. So it dawned on me when I was building up this operations team, there's going to be 2 parts. There's going to be the core operations team, which is the nuts and bolts, make things work, agents value houses. And then there's also going to be, okay, now they've done the valuations and they've instructed, how are we going to make sense of it all? And so went about trying to build a data team. And, I hadn't done extensive hiring, haven't done this 10 times. I don't know how to use SQL. I mean, I get it, but I don't write SQL. And all of a sudden, I've got to build a team. So how did I go about it? So again, be generous with the motifs. Because look, as a startup, you need each of your people to do more than the average. They need to grow, be huge. You know, they need to have a superpower. Even if it's not easy to work with them, they need to have a superpower. So I went about trying to put together a team of the most talented individuals I can find. So what did I do? I firstly spoke to those that I knew I spoke to those who I knew what they were talking about. So people that had done this many times and knew a lot more than me. So I spent time with maybe 3 or 4 senior people, said, look, how does one go about this? Who do you need? And then I got introduced to different concepts. You got the business intelligence guy. You got the architecture guy. You got the data warehouse guy. You got the people that are doing the ETL or the ELT guy. And I'm like, oh my God, it's going to cost me $250,000. Which one do I need first? So I thought, okay, we need to see something. We need visuals. So we need somebody that can build some dashboards and is technically strong. So I sort of figured out the ecosystem a little bit, the micro ecosystem. And then I said, right, I need to find the right people. So I learned from the professionals. I then put together some people for interviews. Trusted my intuition heavily. You know, I was quite a difficult interviewer, very provocative. How are you going to cope in this environment? How are you going to cope when you're asked the same thing 30 times a day? So is this person going to be able to survive in that environment? So I trusted my intuition. I looked for raw intellect. You know, they didn't have to be the finished product, didn't need a PhD, but just needed that deep, deep confidence that they could deliver and really make something special. As I said, I tested their resoluteness in interviews. I was on the front foot, made them come in at 6:30, interviewed people in Euston train station, went the whole hog, like, are you up for it? So I needed to see resoluteness, and also I wanted to see EQ, like, this is the first interaction in a bit of a test, and I want you to know that and not be offended, not take it personally, just roll with it. And then luckily, and then also demonstrate technical excellence. So yeah, as I said, the first guy knew what he was doing and he could do the test to see actually this guy does know what he's doing. But then, you know, I also got very lucky because when I posted my first ad on LinkedIn that we're looking for somebody to come and join the data team, obviously you get loads of recruiters messaging you directly, I'm sure you know it. But this guy messaged me back 5 a.m. I was like, all right. I then called him at 5 a.m. One ring, hello? And then we were in business. Like, this was a guy that was as hungry as I was, stand-up guy. And then we said, right, let's work together. He was expensive, but I tried to, you know, hustle him down, gave him the spiel, whatnot, loads of business coming your way, had no idea. But anyway, he was up for it. And he was putting these candidates in front of me, and this guy was late and doesn't apologize. This guy, you know, is really just gaming it. This guy got kicked out of here. And then we landed on this guy that we eventually hired. And he was great. And he showed me what he could do. He showed me the dashboards. He did the test. He came in at 7. He took my bullshit, the whole lot. Anyway, but the point about having a brilliant recruiter is that he's now helped me hire 7 people. He built that data team and he knew the character was of it. So that was really important in forming a team, is having somebody you can trust, that knows what you want to achieve and is going to be there in the long term to help achieve it with you. Slide 2. So we've got the people. What do you do now? You need to create an objective edifice that people can focus on. Okay, because if it's about the people, you have to have a good relationship. Oh, I know you're busy, let me come around the side door, do this quickly, blah, blah, blah. But no, data app. If you have something, send it to this now department, and you'll get in the queue, it'll get groomed, it'll go through the process, and you'll get your output as and when the business prioritizes it important enough to deal with you. So it's trying to move it into professional realm. You email that email address. It's a department. It has an identity. Who's seen what's it called? Bird Box? Anyone seen that? Netflix. What's the first thing they do when they get to the safety? What do they do with boy and girl? They name them. So that's what we did. We named it. We wanted data. We named it. Giving something a name gives it an identity. It's important. So we now have the people. We've now got this department by way of email address. What else do we need to hire the team? Right. So we've got people, we've got a team, and now how are they going to work? They need tools, they need tooling. And now we've got the guy that's been my right-hand man for the first year. We've got the first guy that I've hired to do data, and this guy already does data, and boom, there's a clash. And they're saying, well, this one only has this amount of, processing power, its orchestrations, and I'm there thinking, oh my God, how do I mediate this debate? They're talking in a language that I don't speak. So I had to step back and think, right, how do we objectively assess which tool is better? So you have to go back to principles. What are the problems we're trying to solve? Can you be collaborative? How expensive is it? Where's it hosted? What's the processing power? X, Y, and Z. And also, it was a bit of a loaded debate, and I tried to make it as fair as possible, but imagine you're paying top dollar to the recruiter and to the new recruit. He comes in and says, this is the tool I want to use, and we say, sorry mate, you're using that one. So it was a really tricky challenge to mediate between two super talented people, and we ended up making a decision. You'll see which one it isn't at the end. Very exciting, the big reveal. Joking. But yeah, that was a challenge. Trying to mediate a debate in a language you don't understand, trying to be fair, trying to give everybody the best chance of success. But we came away with a tool. The two heavyweights fought, and we came away with a tool. So right, what we got here? We got people, we got a quasi-department, we got tools. What do we have next? Right, we need vision. Okay, so as you can see, I said to the guys, the two team leads, okay, we got a department. How are you going to build this department? What's your vision for it? How do you make it more real? So the architecture guys, architecture engineering, we use it interchangeably. So this is your engineer piping. Okay, as you can see, it's a great graphic between Iran and Pakistan. It's meant to be quite comical. Obviously, it went down really well. But that was his ability to show, look, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to connect the different parts of the business, pipe all the data in. It's highly valuable stuff. You don't want it to leak because it gets toxic. I just made up the analogies. But anyway, he came up with this vision, and then we had the other guy that was going to lead for insight, and this is him cooking on gas. When all the data is being piped in correctly and all the different sources are augmented correctly and coordinated correctly, the business is cooking in gas. They can see things. You can see things well, you can see things clearly. The business is doing well. And then this is a little graphic about how the teams work together. And this is a really important point because you got people here that really want to make a mark on the business. And there's debates and there's different objections, there's dynamic tensions, but at the end of the day, it's all working for the same team. In a football team, you need everybody to be playing together. You need the best winger to pass to the best striker so the team scores. So they came up with this working model of how they want stakeholders to engage them, when in the projects they want to be involved, how heavily involved, and whatnot. And through this framework, this was how they were meant to work. And it worked quite well, and it's working quite well. So we've got the detail of how it's going to work. So we're going from a standing start, and we've now got people, a team, tools, and a roadmap, modus operandi. So we're doing okay right now. I'm hanging on by this thread of my, the seat of my pants, but I'm hanging on. All right, finally. And again, this is the galactic themes. This is meant to be like the stuff that the Big Bang is formed from. Anyway, don't judge me on it. So, we need to build culture. Culture is critical, okay? You can't pay people the most, you can't give them the biggest bonuses. If they put YOPA on their CV to start with, doesn't mean much. So when people join, they've got to feel it. They really want to work there. They need to have a culture. Any company needs a great culture. And so this is the data culture. How do we build the data culture? And again, I'm not technical. So what did I have that they didn't? Well, I had some experience, I had good understanding how the business worked, and I'm relatively commercial. So how do I use those skills and apply it to what they're doing? Come up with a framework where they can look at me as their manager and their leader and say, actually, that makes sense. So these are the principles we came up with. I haven't rewritten them, haven't redacted them. I'm not saying they're right or wrong, it's just what I came up with. Specialized generalists. Be able to provide insight across any unit of the business. So we wanted people who are looking across the whole funnel, not just specialized in one silo. Software agnosticism. We wanted people to be able to feel comfortable with different tools. whether it be Matillion or Redshift or Power BI, Mode Analytics, all the different tools we use. We want people to understand what it means, not just focus on a small corner of the business and say, that's me done, I feel comfortable in this little niche. Pack mentality. So all data is yours. You know, if anybody plays rugby, when the ball gets loose, all the forwards run to grab the ball, okay? So if we're bringing on a new partner or there's something new happening in the business, new division, and you see data, you want all of you say, right, this is mine. This data, I'm going to hoover this up, pipe it in, we're going to start using this. Singularity. I probably haven't used the word in the right way. But basically, a central repository where you have a single source of truth. You want to have a single code library, single definition library. The team be the point of numbers, not people sort of making up their own slice of the data. You know, engage the data team, come up with universal numbers where people can agree to it, sign up to it, and understand that that's the business view. Shared ownership. So again, we don't want to have a culture of blame. We want people to stand behind other people's work. Doing the QA was a brilliant way of this, because when you have one person standing up there showing what they're doing and people are critiquing it and improving it and finding little snags, then they become invested in it and they feel an affinity with it. So I don't want people to just sort of sit behind their assets and go, oh, it's not me, it's him, just chat to him. I want people to, you know, be in it together. And then mutual culpability. Again, if things go wrong, take it as a team. Don't apportion blame. You guys are data. It comes into data at, not X Joe Blogs or Y Jane Doe. It comes into data. This is your product as a team. Stand behind it as a team. So those were the principles. And then how do I embed the principles? So it's great having principles, but how do you embed them? Fine. So data team being semi-autonomous. So look, I knew my limitations. At the very outset, which is in January 2018 when I wrote this, I wrote it knowing that at some point, you know, I'm going to have to give them away. And it's like being a parent, and I'm not a parent yet, but we may be soon. No, just a joke. My fiance's in the crowd. It's like when you're a parent and your kids go off to university, it's the biggest honor for them to go and achieve in the world by themselves. So I wanted to help set them up for success, and then at the right time, let them go and be their own department and be successful in the business. So we set it up knowing I'm going to give it away. Got a final round with the head of data this Friday. Really excited for that. So semi-autonomous, that meant people, that imbued people with the confidence to act with independence from the outset. That was the purpose of that. Secondly, repurpose existing assets to reflect new data team. So the new forms, Slack groups, email groups, you know, address us formally as data app and do it through the channels that people already know. Data team meetings, all right? So when you walk past the boardroom or the meeting room, oh, who's in here? Oh, it's a data team. Oh, there's a data team now, we're excited. Okay, that's going to stand-up comment. Right, data team email group, said that under repurposing assets. Weekly digest, so like send out product, send out snippets of insight that you're looking at that people aren't even thinking about, and see whether or not you can pique somebody's interest in a topic and bring them on a little journey. But it's good for branding, good for profile, send them out content. And then data team retros, you know, talk about what went well, what went wrong, what would you improve. Similar to how a dev team works, you know, when you have deep retrospectives, you look at all the things that went well, the bugs, the tickets were outstanding, that got done, didn't get done, additional requirements, X, Y, and Z. So there's a lot of overlap, and looking back at what you did and how it worked is important. Okay, so, last one is output tracking. So we used Asana, we allocated tasks, we integrated the Asana into Power BI, and then we saw the task burn down rate per analyst. So we could see which analyst was working at what clip and what of the outstanding tasks per week were complete and non-complete. So we tried to get a bit scientific without going to overkill. Okay, stage 2. So as I said, I was on this run. Okay, sorry, stage 2. Stage 1 is complete. We've got the team. Okay, now what do we do with this team? It's like having an expensive car on the drive. Where's the keys? How do I drive it? Where am I going? Going to Reading Football Stadium, go to where are you going? Buckingham Palace. Right, so I was on this run. It's dark, and I'm listening, and indulge me, I'm sorry, I got the mic. And they're talking about, in the galaxy, and I'm not an astrologer by any means, but in the galaxy, there's all this sound and light in colours that the human eye can't perceive. And if you were able to perceive what was going on, you'd look up and there would just be this incredible cacophony of colour. But all we can see is in black and white and a bit of blue. And it struck me that, look, we've got this business, okay, and people are there doing stuff. There's actions, there's endpoints, there's occurrences, and that's all measurable. There's things going on, and it's happening everywhere. And you're sitting down at your desk, and all around you, the business is working hard. There's people all around the country doing stuff. Did they go to that valuation? Did they instruct? Did they list? Did it get an offer? And it's happening all around, you can't see it. So this is like the business generating data. And then you need to capture some of it. So you've got, let's say, some of it is clean data capture, okay? So you filter out all the noise. I think the word is you munge it, you do data munging. So you've now got some clean data to work with. And then what do you do from the clean data? You try and provide some insight. And that's what's really important, is trying to give the business the insight, because the numbers alone are not enough. You've got to make them meaningful. So that was just my visualization of how you need to use your data tools to capture all the interactions happening in the business. Okay, so we've got data, we've got a team, and now you go to the departments, you're like, what do you want? And it's like when you go on holiday, or when you go to a restaurant, and you go to a buffet, you go down the buffet tables, and you go, oh, that chicken looks nice. Oh, that beef looks nice. That sushi looks nice. That pasta looks nice. Anyway, you've got a plate, a smorgasbord of 36 different courses that don't go together, that you never can eat, but because it's there and it's because it's free, you take it. So it's the same with this. It's like we go to the teams. What data do you want? What metrics best represent you? And people are like, well, this, 1,000 things. Everybody's there building it, and everybody's distressed, and everybody's asking for things that they have one definition of, another team has a different definition of, but it's got the same name. There's not a data glossary quite yet, so everybody can refer back to it. And then you have this sort of immense pressure, this massive expectation to produce everything that you've asked for. And so you've got to have strong leadership. As a manager, you have to try and provide the leadership so that people don't expect the unrealistic and people don't misrepresent what their team does in the quest to show themselves to be more important or more on the vanguard of a certain area than they are. So we went through this process of trying to refine the metrics of what really represents you, what's insightful, what's helpful. Okay, so people have chosen the metrics, we've gone through them, we've qualified them, we've refined them. And then we're bringing different teams online. So it was just the sales team that was getting the plaudits, because they bring in the revenue. But there's loads of other teams in the business doing really important things as well. And even if they're in a different location, you need to sort of say, well, look, these guys are here as well. You're sitting in central office in your ivory tower, and you're only seeing certain bits of the business. So all of a sudden, you're bringing different teams online, okay? And with that, again, you've got the metrics, you've got the different teams, and you've got thousands of questions. For the first time, people are able to see information about themselves, and other people can see information about them. And it's, you're bringing people from the dark into the light. And when you do that, you've got to make sure you've got the resources to cope with it. So we had a data request form, and the team was getting inundated with data requests, not from just like the C-suite, and not just from the directors or the sales team, but from everyone. So when you go through that process, you've got to make sure you've got the resources and the management tools to say, look, you can't get everything you want. You've got to be sensible. You've got to ask for things that are value additive, and you've got to be patient. But it was a great process. We went from having no data. Remember, this is still stage 2 of get data. We went having no data and loads of data all at once. Okay, so then this is a concept. I said at the beginning, it's about concepts more than facts. So if the business is in the dark, you've got the people that know the business. And you've got this arc of intuition, where you can't see something to be factual, but you can feel it, and you can sort of see it, but nobody else can see it, but you know it, you're at the center of it. And so what I tried to get the data guys to do is to bring these silos of reality, okay? Bring light into the dark and show the facts. each fork is a fact. You can see revenue now. You can see tenure, you can see conversion. And all of a sudden, it's not that one or couple of people that know the business the best that can have an opinion. Other people can objectively calibrate the fact and have a commercial opinion. Now, they may do it wrongly, that's another danger, but bringing a data team online is going through this process. It's bringing light to the business, it's bringing teams online, and it's just trying to make facts accessible, okay? Because it's organized, and it's got a topic, and it's got a title, and there's specificity. It's not just thousands of numbers all over the place. This is real. It's about something that's really relevant to a team or to a part of the business. So then stage 3. Well, this is the stage 3. Positioning of assets. So there's a term in astrology, which is OMG, IJ, SS, FT, FT. Does anybody guess what that means? Yeah. 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 4. Correct. So I've changed the Saturn to insight. But that is a real thing in astrology, is that when people use equipment to see Saturn, it's like this moment of rebirth. Like they can't believe that they're seeing it. And this is planet insight. It's the same with your insight analysts, okay? You've got them positioned. And you know, Earth to Saturn is 1.2 billion kilometers away. Land's End to John O'Groats is 1,407 kilometers away. But even so, sitting in your head office and understanding what's going on, even at the other end of the country, is super exciting. Because the ability to compress space and time is interesting. You know, you're sitting there and you can actually monitor the performance of your agent in Liverpool. You've never been there. You don't know what goes on there, you don't know the market, but you can see if they're doing a good job or not. And that's really exciting. So you've got to position your dashboards, your analytics, and your resource in the right places at the right time to see the right things. So it's all about positioning. And as you know, startups move at warp speed, okay? Lots of you put your hand up, you're founders. There's thousands of things to do all at the same time, so much pressure. And so people are asking for things the whole time, but so quickly they become irrelevant. And by the time you see it, it's gone. See what I did there? It's gone, faded. Black hole. That is meant to be a black hole as well. So yeah, so time is of the essence. And the idea I came up with to capture this is the idea degradation gradient. Okay, so you start here with infinite clarity, all right? You've spotted something super important, you need it now, and it's full of color, full of lucidity, you know it. But then when it gets in your data request system, or it goes through your data app, and it gets prioritized and deprioritized, and the business is moving at warp speed, and it's getting a bit dull, and it's losing some of its radiance, it goes into the relevance decay. So the speed to serve is critical. You know, you need to really be ruthless with dedicating resource to the right problems at the right time, because they so quickly become out of date. So that was the idea I thought captured that. And then finally, as I said, like, I can't empathize with the quality of people's code. I can't say, look, that bit of QA was ruthless, you know, wow. 600 lines, all this, that, the other. But what I could do is I could try and provide the guys space to think. So you've got me there. I know it doesn't look quite like me. You've got the business here, this rolling rock. You've got the analysts here. And I need to interface with the business and give the guys space to think, because everybody wants their stuff immediately. And the guys are super talented. And so as a manager, it's really important to let them have the time and space to think for themselves and be creative. Because if the team is continuously reactive, you're not bringing the best out of them. And they get a little bit bored and a little bit staid, and they're like, you know what? I can't do the best of my ability where I am. So you've got to make sure that they get the right balance between servicing real business problems and creating things that are new. And that was another thing that I tried to help with. And then stage 4. Okay, stage 4 is now you've got a data team, you've got data, you've got some insight, and so now how do you make database decisions? And this is a concept of territory planning. It didn't exist in the business before. I don't know how widely used it is, but essentially, we're an estate agent, and the lifeblood of our business is codes. So allocating somebody a code is giving them the ability, the unit, to earn money. And previously, when we started, agents would come and go, territory would be available, and we'd give this code to that person and that code to that person. There was no framework or methodology for it. So when we had the resources and the time and the space, we started thinking, right, well, how do we use a data-based approach to allocating territory, to doing this territory planning? So here you can see some of the maps with open postcodes or patches, closed patches, misallocated patches. And then from that, you can see a single patch here, and then people's codes. And then you can see how people are performing and what they're doing in those codes, and using data to demonstrate that. So then this is another example of a funnel. We're trying to turn territory planning into real pseudoscience, really allocate those codes in the best way possible, really optimize it. So then we've done like a different part of the business. So then how do you stitch it all back together again? So we came up with a concept, this operational health, and we have a funnel. And the funnel goes through top to bottom at the most critical stages in our customer journey. And like a surgeon, okay, you want to isolate all the problems, go in directly to the sense of trauma, and then take out the dying cells and not the healthy cells. So it's the same with problem diagnostics, okay? You wanted to be able to see the whole picture, see where things are going wrong, and dive into that. Which region, which payment method, which agent is it specific, on what day, at what time, and really dive into that detail. And so producing assets like that was, again, a real leap forward in stitching everything together and understanding how the whole works, not just the sum of the parts, but the whole, going up to see the whole, and then drilling back down into the specific site where there's an issue. So, how am I doing for time? Yeah? Okay, not long left to go. So then this is another dashboard that we produced. So you saw operational health funnel. This is meant to alert to us where the issues are. And then when you find the issue, then you go into that source. And what can you see? So this was representing one of our payment methods. We weren't selling stock at the rate we wanted to. We need to know why is that. And our system's complex, and there's a multitude of reasons why. So you've got to think, okay, well, it starts here. It's instructed. And we know the endpoint is completion. You're giving the keys to the customer. Where is every single drop-off point in that journey? What is all the interactions that could happen where it could go wrong? And you could start enumerating the sites of concern and then addressing them. Whether it's process, personnel, product, whatever it is, you want to have an asset to show you how it all stitches up at the top, the ability to isolate an issue, then go into that isolated issue and understand, right, there's more complexity in here. Let me dive into that complexity, let me apprehend it and solve it. So that's another example of an asset that we built to try and go from just having information, but having genuine insight and making decisions based on data. And then basically, finally, you'll see, you remember at the beginning, the first slide that I showed you, the first dashboard. And this is just to sort of encapsulate a bit of the journey we went on. And the resolution's not great, and I've had to redact lots of the numbers because, pretty sensitive about these things. But we've now got a lot more detail here, okay? And from this one screen, almost all of the business is brought online, one snapshot, and you can see what's going on. Net performance, properties on portals, you can see yourself if you've got Rightmove, so that's not exciting. But that was just like evidence of the journey of where we've come. You had a business that's looking at these 6 metrics, and then all of a sudden we've got a whole reporting suite and a whole team that covers the entire gamut, whether it be field sales, contact center, the tech team, and this is the sort of the unifying agent. And that's it really. That's a little insight of how we did things at YOPA, and I hope you enjoyed the journey through the galaxy.
Thank you, Sam. So we've got some time for Q&A now, so if you have a burning question, could be about the presentation or about YOPA in general, or Sam, or related topic, please raise your hand and I'll come around and give you the mic. So.
Do you know how much money you generated to the business by doing that? Like the return on investment of having all these people working on all that?
It's a good question. Okay, so in terms of a number, I can't give it to you. But if you think about that territory planning slide, and you think about, okay, so each code that you give to an agent represents a valuation, which could instruct, which is money. The fact is that we grew 3x last year. We're now the 6th biggest, and it's not because we did data well. But even just that one piece of it, even that piece alone of optimizing territory allocation, if you get that right, because the codes of the unit of revenue, that's completely correlated with revenue. And so making that into a science, I think, had a huge economic benefit to the business. And that's just one small bit. So it's a very valid question. But I think that washed the team's face in cost.
I'm just curious a little bit about your sort of principle and how you make the sort of the mantra of the company behind those key principles, especially as you scale up. The idea of having centralized data, making sure all the information is known by everyone. Surely, as the team expands, it becomes much more complicated to keep those principles out. And I'm just curious how you navigate that process throughout the growth of a fast-growing startup. Right? If you have 3 members, very different from if you have 20 or 100.
Yeah. Again, good question. So there's certain teams that need to scale on a one-to-one basis, okay? So if one event happens, you add a head. But there's other teams in the business where you get good operational gearing, okay? So you need one person to do lots of things, and it's not a one-to-one relationship. So if you set up the team correctly, and you have the ability to collaborate, share workspaces, QA together, monitor one another's dashboards, and add, you can keep that sense of operational gearing, and you don't need to just infinitely add people that you then have to imbue with these different principles. We've got a team now of 7. We're not going to be adding too many more heads to it. And so once you have that central core, they're the radiators of the culture. And it may get trickier, but as the pressure on the team increases and the margin for error decreases, everything gets tighter. Definitions are locked down. Processes, there's no going around the side. The QA is beautiful. Interactions with the engineering team, they're on point. And so you do the same things, but you basically turn the vice. And all of the errors you squeeze out, and then through that you build a deeper culture of resilience and results. So that's what we're trying to do. And I'm not saying we're there yet or it's going to be perfect. We just want people to be doing the right things for the business and thinking in the right way.
What's the most interesting insight you discovered, and how do you discover it?
I knew someone was going to ask a question like that. I was racking my brain. That's why I didn't put it on a slide. It's really, really hard to pin down to one thing. I think, okay, so something interesting is the power of buyers. You list a property, and that's one vendor, they pay. You put the property up on a website, and then there's lots of buyers that come to see that. If you then monetize those buyers, you've got repeat custom, and you've only had a single acquisition cost. And then that builds a networking effect. And so seeing that actually we have one of the largest buyer databases in the country really brought home the power of that. And it was only through coordinating all the data and having dashboards related to buyers that we saw the power of all of these people. And I think that's a powerful theme in the business.
So before creating the dashboard, you were saying that you have to create a kind of a glossary for the different metrics. And you were saying that the different teams had different definitions. So the first part of my question would be, how did you manage to make sure that everyone agrees on the right definition of the metrics? And the second part is, after creating the dashboards, I imagine that people would have additional requests.
Yeah.
So how do you manage those feedback, and how do you manage the changes of the dashboards?
Okay, cool, thank you. So, you gotta accept that some people are going to call things the same, and it means something different. It's just it happens naturally in language. You could call something blue, but actually your concept of blue is very different from somebody else's. So there's still a tension in the business around people calling conversion one thing, and it's meant for one person as this type of conversion, like an upfront conversion versus backlog conversion. It's really hard to eradicate it completely, because then you have to go around and marshal everybody's speech and make sure that everybody's speaking in a single language. And it may not be an apt example, but for example, in the UK, everybody speaks English, but you've got regional dialects. And you can understand the different dialects. And this person from Manchester, he speaks like this person from Cornwall, he speaks like in Nordic. So people use the same definitions with different meanings. It's accepted that it happens. If you add the meaning for that usage into their dashboard, and it's a marketing dashboard, people can see the definition and see it's different. But it's a problem we haven't fully fixed yet. You just have to have an acceptance that it's going to be there. And the more that you can define things and show exactly what's in the calculation, the clearer it becomes. And then in the second part is when enough is enough. Again, you got to feel it out. People give you initial requirements, you deliver it, then actually when they get it, it's not showing the story they wanted. Let me amend it slightly. Okay, fine, I've got a little bit more capacity, I'm invested in this project, let me give you a bit more. You give it back to them. That's really interesting, but can you do this? And then all of a sudden, right, enough is enough. Have you got a product? Is it working? Does it meet your requirements? Is it providing you insight? Are people using it? If all of those are yes, then you move on. And when you get the next round of capacity, go back to it and chisel it and refine it. But you have to know when to say, enough is enough.
Hi, thank you for your talk. I notice a lot of BI stuff. Are you doing any machine learning?
Good question. Everyone's doing some type of AI, machine learning. If you're not doing it, you better start doing it, because everyone's doing it. My grandma's on Facebook because everyone's on Facebook. It's really powerful. It's super powerful. To get buy-in from the very top, to focus on machine learning and actually say, we're not going to get actionable insight immediately, but we may in time, is tough, because when you're still growing, you have thousands of critical live issues that need solving. And as I said, it's really hard to create the space to allow these people to do it. Yes, we will start doing it. Yes, it's talked about. We've got 2 of the guys going on in Oswald's data science camp. Do you know him? Yeah, so I got 2 guys going on his data science course. We really want them to use it. The more of these assets they bring online, the more that people can self-serve, the more space they create, and then can actually, as a side project, do it themselves. So it's encouraged, but we haven't got a silo in the business dedicated to it, but we will.
Hi, so first of all, thanks a lot for your talk. I felt it was like Yoda telling us about data. It was a bit very entertaining and interesting, so thanks a lot. I have 2 questions. So the first one, have you thought of having the data team educate a little bit the other teams, the business teams, to some basic stuff so that they can be a little bit more autonomous and they have a little bit less requests? And second, how do you keep your team happy and incentivized and not frustrated, knowing that sometimes, as you said, they might have a lot of different requests, some which are prioritized because it's going to be, a C-level asking for it for one investor meeting, but they would rather work on something more interesting.
Okay, so just to play it back. Second part is how you keep them happy,
Yes.
and the first part is
The first part was, have you thought of having the data team
Yeah, how do they educate?
a bit,
Yeah.
do a little bit of, lunch and learn or stuff
Yeah.
like that?
so every 2 weeks they do a data stakeholder meeting where all the different departments from the business are invited. They can see some of the cool projects the guys are working on. That's a mainstay. And the way in which we do projects is there's different multi-departmental squads, and there's normally a data person in a squad, and so they will help shape the data requirements for that certain project, and then have a chance to interact with the different people in the squad on the project about how they see things and how they go about it. So there's good cross-pollination there. They've got a good bi-weekly space in the diary to invite everybody to get involved, and so that helps them show off a bit. You want people to have the ability to showcase. And then in terms of how you keep them happy, look, these guys are some of the smartest people in the business, and they're restless and they're young, and it's an ongoing challenge. So getting the culture right is important in the team. Getting people bought into the mission of the business, like, are they aligned with what YOPA are trying to achieve? Do they feel part of it? When they put in the extra hour, is that extra hour got a correlation to a movement in the business? How are they moving the needle? How does what's the metric that their output moves? So seeing that, and sometimes you get emails saying, oh my God, we're so happy this person did this. This whole team now has so much more motivation. And when you get that feedback, that's really positive. Giving people the opportunity for training is important as well, to learn and to develop. People like going for lunch and going on socials and just trying to give them different stimulus, not just you sit here, you do these requests, and that's your job. Engage them in different ways. Engage them through the C-level, through peers, through different departments. Give them time to showcase what they can do, and give them opportunities to get even better.
Thanks again for your presentation. If you had to do it all again, knowing what you do now, is there anything you would do differently?
So I don't have an immediate answer. I don't think I made any huge mistake. I try to not waste people's time and the business's time. So I think what we've invested in is going to stand at the test of time. It will be upgraded and improved, and you may switch from Matillion to Kafka or one to the other. You may go to Power BI to Looker. Apparently that's meant to be really good. So I'm not saying we've settled on the magic formula, but the whole business is using it. So in terms of how I've managed the people, so okay, I'll give you a good example. And this doesn't answer it directly, but I remember once I asked somebody, why is it taking so long? And they gave me the technical explanation, and they brought language to bear that I'd never heard before. And I listened, and I repeated it verbatim to the senior management in a meeting about why it's taken so long. And the guy said to me, you know what? When you did that, I really looked up to you. You understood what my problems were. You had technical empathy. I felt supported. I felt proud of you. And so the biggest limitation is that I didn't speak their language. I didn't have the empathy. So if I did it all again, I'd probably not have waited 12 months to get ahead of in. I'd probably have waited 9 months and then spend 3 months coaching them commercially to bring them online and then move away. So that's the empathy part, the technical empathy part. I'd have got somebody in to support earlier.
Que la famille